Welcome to Scaletail Podcast. I'm your host and friend Mausmi Ambastha, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Throughout this podcast, we aim to provide valuable customer success insights and knowledge alongside our esteemed guest. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, whatever floats your boat. You can find the links in the description below. In today's episode, we are going to talk about avoiding mistakes that derail early stage startups. Now, that's a tough topic. And to discuss on this topic, I am truly honored to have a renowned guest with me, someone who's widely recognized in customer success community and someone I greatly admire. Irit Eizips. I hope I pronounce your name correct, Irit.
Yes, Mausmi, thank you so much for having me. You absolutely nailed it. It's already starting in a good direction. So
Perfect. I still need to talk about your introduction, Irit, and I really would love to. Irit is the Chief Customer Officer and CEO at CSM Practice. She's a world-renowned expert on customer success strategies. She was nominated top customer success strategist and influencer year after year since 2013 for her contributions in shaping CS methodologies for startups as well as large companies. In early 2023, Irit was named as one of the top 100 customer success influencers. In 2022, top 25 most innovative leaders in CX. In 2021, Irit was recognized as one of the top 100 global inspirational leaders and top 150 global customer experience thought leaders. The list just goes on and on. And honestly, I'm a bit nervous talking to someone like Irit who knows so much. It's a pleasure to have you join us today on our podcast. And I want to express my sincere admiration. I am your fan. Before we delve into our topic, I really want to know a little bit about your background and your journey in customer success, Irit.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, as you're reading this list, I'm like, wow, that's I know I have it as a list somewhere, maybe on my LinkedIn, but I don't wow, this is quite a bit. So thank you for reminding me. I was like, who is this person? Is this really? um, yeah, so I started in customer success like almost everybody else. To me, it was almost like by mistake, honestly. I just wanted to work with a specific person who I worked with at a different company. His name was Jim Eberlin. He was the CEO of a previous company I worked with. And then he moved out of that company and started a new startup. Back then it was called Jbera. Now it's called Gainsight. Everybody knows about Gainsight.
Gainsight is the leader in terms of customer success platform.
But back then there wasn't a quadrant, and there wasn't not most companies didn't even have a customer success function in their organization, but there were enough SaaS companies emerging as startups that had a severe issue, which was churn. And so smart people like Jim Eberlin decided, you know what, we should actually have a data-driven strategy around that. And that's what led him to found Gainsight. I called him about like a year and a half after I think he set up the company. And I was just like calling him to check in on him and let him know, I just had a conversation with somebody else. So I just wanted to let him know the good things we were saying about him and just catch up, And then he told me that he got his first round A of funding and that he's looking for additional people to join the team. And if I would be interested in joining, I was like, of course. And then before I knew it, 2 weeks later, I was already part of the team working with Nick Maida, Dan Steinman, the rest of the OG. And we were really the focus on the first year and a half on interviewing as many customer success executives as we could to really understand, and anybody that was just doing retention, sometimes they wore different hats in the organization, to just understand what is it that they're doing to lead to lower churn. That was the big question back in 2013. And a year and a half into it, I felt, my background is really from consulting. My first job out of the university was a strategy consultant, and my entire life I've been a consultant. And so working in a software company always felt a little off to me. It didn't really jive with my core competencies and the where I was already wired at that time, because I already had like almost 20 years of experience. So I took the leap and I left, and 10 years later, here we are. I have my own consulting firm for the past decade, helping companies either improve their customer success organization, set it up. And really my goal is to get them more out of their net recurring revenue. So if they're at wherever they are, they should be at around 120% net retention rate and more. And if you're at 100 or 107, you're just doing okay, really. That's just like the average. If you're doing less than that, you definitely need somebody to help you out. And so that's where I come into the picture, either optimize what they have or scale what they have. And that's a very long answer. What is it that I do? And what's my background?
Wow. You have had the front seat on how the entire customer success thought process has come into this industry as a whole. Like nobody knew or understood customer success when Gainsight started. Like that time, there was still early days. So I think you've been part of making history, actually, not just observing it, part of making history, where a lot of people, including myself, have read through your blogs, read through your content, gone through your podcast, and learned from it on what needs done, what are the priorities, and what are the things. So thank you very much for doing that, not just coming on the podcast, but being part of the history and structuring customer success as a process. I generally try to talk to people who are in early stage, sort of 0 to 1, and trying to go from 1 to 10, right? And when we look online, a lot of these thought processes were obviously created by large companies. And a lot of information is shared. And when you read through it, it sort of feels like for an early company, feels a little lost as to what to do, what not to do, so many things to do, what to pick up first. And apart from that, a founder always has 10,000 things on the table. Something or the other is always burning, and it's a priority. But having, gone through it, what I understand is customer success is a long game. The results don't come tomorrow. You work and the results come later. But if you don't work now, you will be in a ditch when you start working. It'll be too late. So what I really want to understand, because of your deep experience, what should an early stage founder or an early stage CS head who started into a company, what are the things they should focus on and they should look at instead of getting lost into 10,000 things in the world that are there?
Well, first we have to ask ourselves, what is the main goal for your first 50 accounts, your first 50 customers? As a CEO, as a founder, yes, you want them to be successful, but you're also looking to prove the concept that your startup is actually valid. And you're learning a lot about your business.
Correct.
You will hear things like, what's my go-to-market strategy? What's my ideal customer profile? You really don't know until you had a few of them and you could see, okay, year after, 2 years after they onboarded, who's really successful, who's giving me references and advocacy, who's easy to onboard after 2 years that I had my business, or a year after I started the business, or I had 50 customers go through this. We don't know. We don't know until we continuously try. And that is really the case when we have a program that we sell that has a lower range of MRR, which is where most CEOs are comfortable with, unless they have had an organization or a company that they had an exit or they sold before. If I'm a first-time CEO, I'm going to probably shoot for a lower MRR. I'm probably not going to have annual contracts for the most part, especially if I have, if I'm shooting for a lot of customers at a lower price range. And that's the majority, I think, for most startups. Some of them will have a company where they set up and they will have 7 customers, each giving them multi-million-dollar deals. But I feel like that's the outlier. So I'm going to talk about, the majority of them, how do they approach things, right?
Yeah, that's our audience anyway. B2B SaaS companies who are sort of selling to SMB mid-market, not going to enterprise, because early days you can't really go to an enterprise anyway.
Sometimes you can,
it's
but
harder.
It's really hard. Yeah, unless you've been previously a CEO and you have a lot of business experience, you're probably going to shy away from that. So if you're relatively young in the business world in general, or never had a company of your own, you're going to be more comfortable just doing the proof of concept in the lower market and then go up.
Up, of course.
We did the same thing at Gainsight, by the way. We had some larger accounts, which, the problem sometimes with enterprises is that they're going to dictate your product roadmap to meet their specific needs. And it's going to be very hard to then sell that specific use case to everybody else, because by then they almost like hired you as their dev team to build a custom app for what they need. So I almost, unless it's geared for a large organization, I almost deliberately shy away from that. So we're in that stage. So whatever recommendations I'm going to make, it's for that phase where you have not completely proved the concept. You're not necessarily having a target market for enterprise with multi-million-dollar deals. It's just like a regular mainstream type of startup.
Small mid-market. Yes, perfect. That's the place.
So for the first few customers, there's kind of like I've seen this maturity curve. So when you first get started, you do want to have a high touch strategy with those accounts.
Correct.
But your first CSM is going to do everything. So this is your first CSM, is going to be super reactive. And Gainsight once called it kind of like a unicorn CSM. They called it, this is the stage where, you're mainly focused on technical support, but it kind of feels like that. But your CSM is going to do a lot of technical support tickets, troubleshooting, making sure the onboarding is done right, answer any type of questions. And in this phase, in order to phase out of this, two things needs to happen. One, you need to get your onboarding defined. And then two, you need to get your tech support more mature. Why? Onboarding would just make sure that there's less technical support tickets in general and the client has a better experience. But you can't do that completely until you get a sense of what it is that you're going to implement. So your first implementations are going to be highly customized for any account that the sales miraculously brought over. Okay?
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, even if you're product led, your first few accounts are going to be highly customized. So you don't necessarily want to have a well-to-do standardized onboarding framework. However, if you can, as soon as you can, that's one thing that you want to define. So sometimes it's as soon as you approach the $1 million, meaning you already have 100 customers or a little over 50, you're going to start seeing what works, what doesn't, which customers were able to adopt right after onboarding, which ones are successful, what did they do with us during onboarding that made them successful, what did we do with them during onboarding that made them successful, and then interview the ones that weren't successful during onboarding. Actually, literally have the CEO call all these clients and say, what did you need to be successful with us? It might have been a misfit. And I just released a video about, bad sales fit. Fix that, fine. But for those that were a good fit and they weren't onboarded properly, what was missing? Ask them. And then come up with this framework, standardizing, create a document that just lists step by step. What should you be doing? What should you be asking during kickoff? What happens after? What is the content you're going to nurture them? Are you going to have a video? Whatever it is, right? And then for tech support, this is super important. You want to kind of like, once you have more than 50 accounts and a few support tickets, you want to have a system in place. You want to start defining what are the repeatable things that we keep hearing about. Are there some simple things where we can start creating knowledge-based articles? If you don't do that, you're going to have a backlog of support tickets and the same questions being asked
again and again.
Again and again.
Perfect.
And so you would not have time to do onboarding properly. And certainly you would not be able to get to the next phase. So this is phase number 1, the tech support phase. Step number 2 is when you define the onboarding. The key to know that you nailed this, you want to see 1, your conversion. Typically, this would be attached to a conversion rate.
Correct.
Right? So you want to see that your conversion rate is really well, because you're still usually at this phase in your MRR world. You still don't have usually annual contracts yet. So, if they finish the onboarding and they're not adopting, they cancel the agreement, then their conversion is really poor. So you want to see an uptick in that. And secondly, you want to see how many advocates are you getting post onboarding? Because if you structure this well, you're going to have first value delivered, an aha moment during the onboarding phase.
Correct.
So if this is done and your backlog is not a nightmare, then you know that you're ready for the next phase, which is being proactive. Now, why being proactive is important? Being proactive is important because now I can budget time to increase the relationship with my clients. I can increase the breadth and depth of the relationship, meaning have more, actually nurture to have more relationships and deeper relationships and more frequent touch points with the appropriate cohort. And then I also want to dedicate some time to plug in what we call a customer value journey activities. So proactively, really think about the customer journey path and say, what am I going to talk about to the client about the value that they have gotten, the value that they can continuously get with us, because they might have came here for one use case, but now they have 50 to 100 clients. I know there's other use cases that might be applicable for them. When am I going to discuss that? If I'm too busy doing onboarding and reacting to tech support tickets, I'm never here and I'm never here. And we know for a fact, and I'll talk about the fourth stage in a second, but we know for a fact, and this is the formula of customer success, right? Customer success equals customer outcomes and is a dependency of also customer experience. If we nail the customer experience and we nail the customer outcomes, we're going to see an increase in NRR. If I were to draw this on a quadrant, then what I'm looking at here is the better the customer experience and the more the outcome, whatever customers that have high outcomes and a great customer experience are gonna actually advocate for us, right?
Yes.
We can do a land and expand. By the way, this is the time where you also want to dream up what's your upsell strategy. Imagine that, right? You're going to get upsell if you have a strategy for upsell. You're definitely going to retain. So retain to me is a defensive, like a defense type of strategy. And this is more like offense, not in an offensive way, but you want to start getting out of defense and into
I got the reference. Irit, just one question before you move forward. You were talking about value delivery coming at phase 2. However, as a founder, when I am getting first few customers, I have to start showing them value early on as well, in terms of, they not to the extent of numbers or ROI, probably early days, but at least they need to feel that I've been able to deliver some value, right?
100%.
Now that, right? So that sort of comes very early on in the picture. From day one, I have to start figuring out what is it and how do I define value for my customers. It's still an exploration in the early days. I don't really know what they would define as value. I know I'm giving these benefits, but how are they calculated as value? That's still early days, very exploratory. But doesn't the work on value starts much early on?
Okay, that's a great question. So when you're here, you don't know what your go-to-market strategy, meaning you're not sure what your value is. The reason why you have one-to-one with customers is that you can ask them, what was the value that you gotten? What is the value that you want?
Correct. Exactly.
It's a pool, okay? So your value here, it's not like you don't have it, but your value strategy is a pool strategy.
Okay, correct. Yes, absolutely.
It's a push strategy. I already know, Mr. Customer, what is the value that you should be getting. I'm not open necessarily to exotic use cases. So here's the list. Which one do you want? Versus here, because I have no clue, apparently,
Correct.
like I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to ask the clients to give me that feedback. And the reason why I have one-to-one, even if I have a very small MRR, is to be able to conduct these conversations.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely,
Correct.
100%.
Correct.
So it's not like you don't have a value at all. You do, but it's a pull strategy. And that's why it's so important not to have a scalable strategy yet. We're not doing segmentations. Everybody's high touch as much as possible until we get to that, point where we can't do it anymore. And then we need to go to this second stage. But then once this is fixed, I want you to be on the offense. I want you to tell customers what is the value that they should. I want you to educate them. I want you to be way more prescriptive, if you will. Okay? And so once you've done all of that, and I had companies reach out to me, okay, we have all this. We have 136% net retention rate, which is extraordinary, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, you call me. Well, what happens is that at some point, whatever you do on your high touch is just not gonna work anymore. Even if it's a little bit scalable, it's scalable for your current customer size. You have enough CSM in place, you may be using some technology, but at some point you're gonna cap out of that strategy because you're gonna grow from 100, and especially if you're product led, you're gonna have like thousands of customers within a blink of an eye. So once you figured it out, you know what works, you want to move to phase number 4, which is, so this is phase number 3, figure out what works. And then phase number 4, do it in a highly scalable way. So we don't want, here you're kind of like set up the foundation. And then when you get to scale is where you put the cement. You're like, okay, I think I know what works. I set up the foundation. It's kind of like building a house. Let me set up the cement so I can build it at scale. I can build multiple floors on that building. And so what does scalable means? Okay, first of all, your tooling is going to go up.
Correct.
Everything related to data, you need to have way more visibility. Not just have data, have the right structure. Man, I've seen people implement Zendesk, but they don't have picklist fields. Well, what's that going to help you with, right? No. Like you can't have open text fields. You can't query that. Like, so you have
you cannot analyze. Yeah. You can't analyze anything. You cannot find any information.
Yeah. Analyzable. There you go. Exactly. Analyzable data. So that's on data. And then you want to obviously introduce an AI solutions as fast as you can so that you can do productivity, automation, and also consistency of quality. So, because we know sometimes sometimes people love writing emails and they're great at it. And some of us are really good at talking, but they're not so good at formula. So truth be told, almost every email that I write these days, I copy, I paste it into ChatGPT and say, write this email better. And then whatever version it gives me, if it's not too long, because sometimes, let me tell you, ChatGPT can be a little bit wordy. Yeah. But I do kind of like want to see, is there a better way to write that sentence to sound more eloquently or sound more casual? So there's a bunch of tools out there that we can leverage to even scale the high touch. This is for us to get more data-driven decisions. And of course, our tech stack has to be way more robust. So if in the past we told everybody, just invest in a CS tool, these days we're like, no, you actually have to have a full stack so you can do multiple things within your organization. And the way that we think about it is that you need a tool to engage and increase and validate the relationship. You need a tool to unroll, right? Tell them what the use cases are, see who opts in. Then you need a tool to actually help them adopt and actualize value. So that might be checklist, training, LMS systems, whatever it is. And then you absolutely need a tool to do it at scale. So that's your community. and then obviously, so I'm not going to use the word scale. I think there's a better word here, maybe tools to grow. So that would be your potentially renewal system, right? You might want to completely optimize that even further. You might want to have community, so you interact with everybody. Whatever it is, advocacy tools, things that you might not necessarily consider in first, testimonial video tools like vouch4.com. So here you kind of want to continuously add to that cycle, things that prove value, share value, all of that. Kind of want to close that cycle and have a robust tool here. So hopefully that helps.
It's this entire structuring, it's sort of so much clarifies the whole phases, because I've read phases. I have read a lot of stuff, but the way you draw it and the way you explained it, it sort of just opens the entire box as to how it really works. Because I remember reading phase 1, reactive, and then proactive. But to understand really the thought process, I mean, this is really, really helpful in terms of understanding. For now, I will stop right before scale, because that's where our audience is, right? That's where they're thinking. They are in the journey from phase 1 to, I think, reaching towards phase 4. Not yet there, but reaching towards phase 4. That's the journey they are in terms of figuring these out. And the graph that you put in the bottom, and that makes so much sense, just to have the balance between both the things, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because just to complete this, maybe like if you, so this is the quadrant that I'm showing, and anybody that's like listening in this podcast, we're going to have a video with this so you can actually see what I'm drawing on the board here. I think it's cool. So when we have low or very poor customer outcomes and a poor customer experience, this is where
obviously churn.
They just churn without notice. If you do have a good connection with them, but they're just not seeing the fit, they're just not seeing how this is helping their business, you're not doing a good job explaining why you're charging the way you're charging and all the outcomes that they can have, they might churn with notice. But you know what happens when they get a lot of value, but they think you're just a commodity and you're not really great to work with? As soon as another competitor knocks on the door and say, hey, I can give you the same thing for a lower price,
they'll move.
You're going to be replaced. So this is typically moved to a competitor. Or here, either churn or there's a downsell. Okay, we're not seeing enough value. I think we're paying too much. I want to have a discount. So either downsell or churn with notice when there's a relatively good relationship, but not enough value. Move to a competitor if the value is high, but we're not having a good time with you guys. And where we really want them is high value, great experience, and you can't skip a phase. You actually need to nail the onboarding. You need to nail technical support. You need to really understand what adds value to your customers, and then scale it. It just happens a lot faster when you're product led. You get to the scale phase. Yeah.
Yes. But even with product led, I think early days, you still have to go through all that pain before you are able to convert it into a product led engine, right? Because that discovery still happens in early days with you trying to find out, talk to the customer and have more information, and of course, build your PLG engine into the system.
I agree. I would just say, when I work with young startups, I definitely work with them on really making sure that their onboarding and technical support is optimized, or create a separate CSM role from the technical support and onboarding, but make sure that it doesn't spill out to the CSM. So I might even recommend the CEO to hire a CSM that has no technical skills, so it never spills over, if possible, And then when we work on the proactive method, we would probably not do it at a high touch if it's a product-led company. So if the average MRR is anywhere between 50 to 500, we will immediately almost like skip the high touch altogether, unless they do have some clients that are high touch. Then that would be our proof of concept. See if those resonate with some of our accounts. But if they don't have any of those, we will immediately move to, pick a cohort of their smaller accounts segmentation, and then we will pitch the value to those and see how many bites are we getting.
Mm-hmm.
Are there crickets, or it actually resonates with them?
Makes proper sense, because if you start with high touch, it's very hard to, change the model later on with those specific customers, because they're so used to, which is what, early stage founders also feel. First 20 customers, their phone numbers, you give them a call. But once it grows, it's not possible to give the same level to first 20 customers, because you have now 150, but they expect the same. And it takes a lot of energy to sort of slowly move them and get that trust that, team can handle. Don't worry, your process is the same. And that requires a lot of time and energy to, keep those customers happy and drive them to the channels that you have set up within the business. So I understand why you're talking about that PLG should be moved as quickly as possible to the model that you really want to go towards. So that's perfect. This is really clear as to, in the sequence of things, what needs to be your priority, and not get lost into the world of let's do this XYZ. This is the sequence. Sort your onboarding, get your tech support sorted, then work on the relationship. This is the journey that we take. And of course, value being pulled before and pushed later once you have a better structure.
Correct.
Now, what is it that you really definitely should not do? Like things that people sort of get lost in it.
Don't put the cart before the horse. Don't start automating processes before you really know what your ideal customer profile is, before you really honed in on your go-to-market strategy. Allow that breathing room. It's like opening a bottle of wine. You want to kind of let it breathe a little bit. So don't do segmentations. Even the data, you wouldn't necessarily know what data you should be tracking. So allow yourself some time to breathe with that. Maybe start tracking the data and kind of watch for trends. And if you can invest in an AI solution that can shore up some of these trends earlier rather than later, I think you're going to be in a really good shape. And again, just know that sometimes startups pivot really quickly.
Of course.
And multiple times in the first few years. And so that's why I almost unless it's a tool that's easy to pivot with, just be very, very careful about the structure. You want something that's agile, that helps you, give you visibility to what's going on, but that you can quickly maneuver. So I would shy away from enterprise solutions, even if you think you're going to scale really quickly. Go with companies that have tools that would see you as a key partner versus their long tail. Those are the kind of things that I think sometimes I see mistakes. They go for the biggest thing. They overly invest in structure. Under $1 million, there's still some room you need to leave.
And you're still figuring, like when you say PMF, right? You're still getting to PMF. So that PMF not only applies to your product, it also applies to your own business, your business and your CS system. So it is also looking for a PMF, right? What works, what is my working system, and how long it takes. A lot of people, like when I talk to sort of early days, they kind of get lost into trying to get too micro in terms of analyzing data, trying to analyze customer base and saying this works and this doesn't. And now I can be more confident in saying, that don't do that right now when, you're talking about it, because they always try to the number of customer base is small and they overanalyze that this is my ICP. And I always feel you haven't figured it out yet. You need more data, right? Data needs a basic sample size, and that sample size is not there yet.
Exactly. We learned in 11th grade in high school that you need sample data when you do statistical analysis. Yes. So where did that go? You absolutely need a little bit. Now, granted, there's always an outlier. If you're a company that is built to have 20 customers and be extremely profitable with those 20, then these rules do not apply to you.
No, of course.
This conversation is about the average startup that starts out with something, and they absolutely need to prove the concept because the MRR is relatively small, maybe under $1,000 a month for sure. this is what you need to do. And then, by the way, once you do figure it out, you might really discover very quickly that you can sell the same thing for, I don't know, 25K per year and 50K per year and 100K per year. And once you have enough features, it's going to be $500,000 per year. God knows, when I worked at my previous software companies, it's exactly the journey that we went. When I joined Gainsight, I was like, I don't know, some companies didn't pay us anything and some pay us well under 5K per year. If you can imagine, what a deal, right?
Yeah.
But the tool was immature and we didn't really know, and we're still figuring things out. I think in like year 3 or 5, our first 6-figure deal was somewhere in year 3, a year after Nick Mehta joined, or a half a year after he joined. And then after that, I think they went through their first multi-million-dollar deal within, 3 or 4 years tops. Like it was pretty quick, but to go from in 2013 having 5K deals to a multi-million-dollar year deal with a large enterprise within less than 5 years, that's what you might realize that this is your world.
Yes. And
I want to caveat that not everybody in Gainsight is paying multi-million dollars. They do have like lower level deals too. Even
yes, I know. We're aware.
Food or anything. Maybe cut that out completely. But companies do go through that process because they try to assess who is their ideal customer profile and how much do you really charge.
You're absolutely right. And in early days, since you don't know your ICP, you will go with essentially whatever customers agree to use your product and they want to experiment it. So you have to, but you're right. It so happens that, early days, if you get a few really large enterprise deals, it sort of really pulls your entire product pipeline in a direction which is more suited for them. And you want to please them, of course, which may or may not be the right decision. It will obviously get to know later, but it may be that particular customer may not be your major mass of your target market. And so it's not solving your problem and your product sort of get lost. It's hard decision early days because it's very enticing to find a customer who's willing to pay and a large amount of money. But it's a journey. It's a journey of making mistakes and learning. And these are hard decisions to say no to as an early stage founder. Some big, large company says, hey, we want to use you. You would find really hard to say, no, we don't want you as customer. But, that's learning that you get. I mean, that's my learning from my last startup. That's what we learned. That don't go with biggest customers, clients. They may pay you, but it is more expensive in the longer run. But just now, as you said, that's the stage when you say that 500,000 deals to multi-million deals. That's a huge scale in a very short time. Even if for a CS company to do CS themselves, right? It's a huge scale, and I'm sure, being experts in that, they would have sorted all the scale problems. So coming back to where we were trying to discuss still on early stage startups, I don't want to get lost into problems of multi-million deals right now. So coming back to early stage startups, so we understand not getting lost in terms of segmentation, not trying to decide your ICP too early because you're not there yet and you don't know. Early days, make sure you talk to your customers and understand the value. Value is pushed. Don't start pushing value too early because you don't really know. And if you start pushing value too early, you might end up pushing the incorrect things before understanding what customers are realizing. That is, I think these are some of the most important things and what you've discussed today. Anything else, Irit? Because I think we are already beyond time. We've gone about 40 minutes, which is fine, but I really want to know if there's something that you would like to add on to this.
Yeah, I'd like to say, if anybody's here listening to this and you feel like you had a few customers and you feel comfortable with your ideal customer profile and, what you've been doing so far, and you feel like you have an okay onboarding process and you got a relatively good handle on support tickets, but you want your team to be a little bit more prescriptive with your customers. You want to increase your net retention rate to above average, and you feel like you need some help with it, feel free to reach out to me. I've been working with a lot of different companies over the years since 2014. Like I said, this is my bread and butter. I help CEOs and chief customer officer chief operating officers, and really crafting up what should the strategy be, especially as you're starting to become a high growth company and you're looking to potentially go IPO in a few years, or you're after IPO and you're looking to do a lot of M&As. This is my forte. I've been working with a lot of different companies, like I said, large, public, small, startups. And that would be the point where you might want to reach out and see if I can help you out. I'd be more than happy. You can go to my website, csmpractice.com, and check us out.
Amazing, Irit. That's a great proposal, listeners. If you are listening, do reach out to Irit. She can really help you out with her huge experience. I think these 30 minutes have been the most useful 30 minutes in like last 2-3 months, I believe. I have it's one thing to read things, but it's another thing to visualize it the way you've put together. I hope whoever is listening on a podcast channel, please do check out the video on YouTube. You might miss the whiteboarding, and that's very, very interesting. Thanks a lot, Irit. Thanks a lot for you have been a valuable contributor to Scale Tail podcast. Your insights and expertise provided to our listeners huge knowledge in this episode. Personally, I can confidently say I've gained tremendous amount from our conversation, and I'm certain the audience also feels the same way. Thank you very much, Irit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Irit. And thank you so much for coming. To all our listeners, if you're interested in connecting with Irit, she's already told you, please reach out to her. She's very easy to talk to and always help out. Her LinkedIn link would be in the description, of course. You will find her on YouTube as well. She has her own podcast channel, which is, trust me, awesome. She hosts engaging discussions with industry experts all around the globe, covering various aspects of customer success. I've included all the relevant links in the podcast description. Take advantage of this opportunity. Explore Irit's exceptional resources. And if you found this podcast interesting, do support us. We are available on all major platforms. See you in the next episode. Thank you all. Thank you very much, Irit. Thank you very much for such an engaging and amazing conversation.